Every single one of you has something that you're good at. Every single one of you has something to offer. And you have a responsibility to yourself to discover what that is. Worry more about what you want to do rather than what you want to be. In case Kanye is serious about this whole POTUS thing, or as he calls it, PZ, I do have advice for him.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 and 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 and 9. This one's for my top 10.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 video with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and this channel was created to help you overcome the #1 challenge that is holding you back, a lack of belief in yourself. You watch these videos because you know there's something more inside you too. You have Michael Jordan level talent at something. So get ready to be charismatic, focus on what you want, and always give back with Barack Obama and my take on his top 10 rules of success to give you the confidence, motivation, and belief that you need. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Don't neglect your education.
Every single one of you has something that you're good at. Every single one of you has something to offer. And you have a responsibility to yourself to discover what that is. That's the opportunity an education can provide. Maybe you could be a great writer, maybe even good enough to write a book or articles in a newspaper, but you might not know it until you write that English paper, that English class paper that's assigned to you. Maybe you could be an innovator or an inventor, maybe even good enough to come up with the next iPhone or the new medicine or vaccine, but you might not know it until you do your project for your science class. Maybe you could be a mayor or a senator or a Supreme Court justice, but you might not know that until you join student government or the debate team. And no matter what you want to do with your life, I guarantee that you'll need an education to do it. You want to be a doctor or a teacher or a police officer? You want to be a nurse or an architect, a lawyer or a member of our military? You're going to need a good education for every single one of those careers. You cannot drop out of school and just drop into a good job. You've got to train for it and work for it and learn for it. And this isn't just important for your own life and your own future. What you make of your education will decide nothing less than the future of this country.
Rule number 2, align your beliefs with your actions.
What made you believe that you can change an entire country or change things in an entire country in a place where I've especially been told that I can't do it? And when did that happen?
I was dropped on my head as a child. And so I didn't have any sense. I think this actually connects with Yara's earlier question about how do we sustain a movement. There's a corollary to that, which is how do we sustain our own sense of hope and drive and vision and motivation, and how do we dream big? And for me, at least, it was not a straight line. It wasn't a steady progression. Mm-hmm. It was an evolution that took place over time as I tried to align what I believed most deeply with what I saw around me and with my own actions. One of the things that I used to do trainings for community organizers, and we used to tell folks, if you want to know what your values are right now, look at where you're putting your time, your money, your energy. You may tell yourself that you are really community-minded, but if all your time, money, and energy is going into going to the club or playing sports, then that's actually what's important to you. Now, what happens is as a young man, I've said before that I was kind of a goof-off. When I was your age, I was not sitting on the stage talking in some serious voice about, I was out there trying to get with some girl or playing basketball or, doing things I shouldn't have been doing. But what started happening was that I would read, let's say, about Nelson Mandela and the struggles in South Africa, and I'm in a class and I'm raising my hand and I've got some opinion, or a representative of the African National Congress would come to campus, and they were my age, and they're risking potentially getting thrown in jail, or they're in exile trying to struggle, and I'm saying to myself, if I really do believe in that, then what am I doing about it? Yeah. And what am I willing to give up? And what am I willing to sacrifice? And so there was this long process for me of aligning what I said I believed in with my behavior, and then testing what I could change so that the world would align better with what I believed in and my values.
Rule number 3, be charismatic.
You may have heard about this. Kanye is thinking about running for Speaker of the House. I couldn't get any stranger. But in case Kanye is serious about this whole POTUS thing, or as he calls it, PZ, I do have advice for him. There's some stuff that I've picked up on the way. First of all, you've got to spend a lot of time dealing with some strange characters who behave like they're on a reality TV show. So you've got to be cool with that. Love you too. Second, this is a second important tip. Saying that you have a beautiful, dark, twisted fantasy. That's what's known as off message in politics. You can't say something like that. There are a lot of people who've lost their congressional seats saying things like that. You don't do that. That's number 2. And number 3, do you really think that this country is going to elect a black guy from the south side of Chicago with a funny name to be president of the United States? That is crazy.
Rule number 4, focus on what you want to do.
I used to have these sessions at the end of the White House internship cycle, where you'd get about 200 White House interns. Typically, they'd interned in various offices for about 6 months. And I would come in at the end of their internship with a group session, and they'd ask questions. And these were all, high-achieving type A, gotten straight A's, They did not act like I acted at their age. They were, So invariably, somebody would ask me, Mr. President, they wouldn't be this bold, but it was basically, how can I be president? In the sense of they were asking, no, in a sincere way, they were asking, I'm inspired by the idea of public service. What path should I take? How should I think about it? And the thing I used to tell them, which was something an older friend of mine had told me back when I was still organizing. I remember him telling me, and I related to these young people, worry more about what you want to do rather than what you want to be. Part of the problem of politics is typically, whether it's Washington, D.C. or any other capital around the world, a lot of people got there because they had an idea in their head of, I want to be a congressman, or I want to be a member of parliament, or I want to be X, Y, Z. And first of all, you're playing the lottery a little bit because there's a limited number of those seats available. But the other thing is, when that's your focus, you may spend 10 years just trying to be something, and when you get there, it turns out that you have no idea what you want to do with it.
Also, if you want to learn from other Black leaders, check out my 254 Black Excellence series. It's free. The link to join is in the description below.
Maybe someone in your family has lost their job and there's not enough money to go around. Maybe you live in a neighborhood where you don't feel safe, or have friends who are pressuring you to do things you know aren't right.
Rule number 5, always give back.
Everyone has a role to play. And those of you who are planning to go into business, I think it's wonderful that you're going into business. And you should pursue it with all your focus and energy. Those of you, though, who are more inclined to teach or more inclined to public service, you should also feel encouraged that you are playing just as critical a role. And whatever occupation you choose, giving back to the community and making sure that you're reaching back to help people, lift up people who may have been left behind, that's a solemn obligation. And by the way, it's actually good for you. It's good for your spirit. It's good for your own moral development. It'll make you a happier person, knowing that you've given back and you've contributed something.
Rule number 6, take the long view.
This is a fun job.
Right.
Every day I wake up and I get a bird's eye view on what's going on everywhere in the world. Mm-hmm. I can have as much of an impact on the things that are important to people as anybody on the planet.
Right.
If you're applying yourself steadily every single day to the job, and you're keeping your North Star, which is, when I leave this office, I want things to be a little bit better, then the day-to-day criticism, the chatter, the noise, is something that you end up blocking out. And the longer you're in the job, the more you're likely to take the long view.
Rule number 7, be patient.
It is very rare where change happens overnight. And that's, now, when you're young, you're supposed to be impatient. If you're too patient and you're young, you may not get to where you want to go. But the danger of impatience is you can get discouraged if change doesn't happen right away. And I think that the most important thing for all of you is to remember that the work you're doing in this place at this moment is not going to be the beginning, and it's not the end.
Rule number 8, be responsible.
When I was young, my family lived overseas. I lived in Indonesia for a few years. And my mother, she didn't have the money to send me where all the American kids went to school. But she thought it was important for me to keep up with an American education. So she decided to teach me extra lessons herself, Monday through Friday. But because she had to go to work, the only time she could do it was at 4:30 in the morning. Now, as you might imagine, I wasn't too happy about getting up that early. And a lot of times I'd fall asleep right there at the kitchen table. But whenever I'd complain, my mother would just give me one of those looks and she'd say, "This is no picnic for me either, Buster." So I know that some of you are still adjusting to being back at school, but I'm here today because I have something important to discuss with you. I'm here because I want to talk with you about your education and what's expected of all of you in this new school year. I've given a lot of speeches about education, and I've talked about responsibility a lot. I've talked about teachers' responsibility for inspiring students and pushing you to learn. I've talked about your parents' responsibility for making sure you stay on track and you get your homework done and don't spend every waking hour in front of the TV or with the Xbox. I've talked a lot about your government's responsibility for setting high standards and supporting teachers and principals and turning around schools that aren't working, where students aren't getting the opportunities that they deserve. But at the end of the day, we can have the most dedicated teachers, the most supportive parents, the best schools in the world, and none of it will make a difference. None of it will matter unless all of you fulfill your responsibilities. Unless you show up to those schools, unless you pay attention to those teachers, unless you listen to your parents and grandparents and other adults, and put in the hard work it takes to succeed.
Rule number 9, improve yourself.
Through education, you can also better yourselves in other ways. You learn how to think critically and find solutions to unexpected challenges. I remember we used to ask our teachers, why am I going to need algebra? Well, you may not have to solve for X to get a good job or to be a good parent, but you will need to think through tough problems. You'll need to think on your feet. You'll need to know how to gather facts and evaluate information. So, math teachers, you can tell your students that the president says they need algebra. Education also teaches you the value of discipline. That the greatest rewards come not from instant gratification, but from sustained effort and from hard work. This is a lesson that's especially true today in a culture that prizes flash over substance, that tells us that the goal in life is to be entertained, that says you can be famous just for being famous. May you get on a reality show, don't know what you've done, suddenly you're famous. But that's not going to lead to lasting, sustained achievement. And finally, with the right education, both at home and at school, you can learn how to be a better human being. For when you read a great story or you learn about an important moment in history, it helps you imagine what it would be like to walk in somebody else's shoes, to know their struggles. The success of our economy will depend on your skills, but the success of our community will depend on your ability to follow the golden rule, to treat others as you would like to be treated.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is have fun.
My advisors asked me, Mr. President, do you have a bucket list? I have something that rhymes with bucket list. Take executive action on immigration? Bucket. New climate regulations? Bucket. Don't interrupt. I'm so in love with you. I feel more loose and relaxed than ever. Those Joe Biden shoulder massages, they're like magic.
He's about to go from commander-in-chief to couch commander.
You, Chuck Todd.
Oops.
You look great.
I feel good.
How much do you weigh?
You know, I could call a nuclear submarine right here.
Obamacare is great, and it's really working.
I have no more campaigns to run. I know because I won both of them. These days I look in the mirror and I have to admit, I'm not the strapping young Muslim socialist that I used to be. And with that, I just have two more words to say. Obama out.
Now I have a special bonus clip from Barack Obama on how to see yourself in other people that I think you're going to enjoy. But before that, it's time for the 3-point landing questions. Let's go from just watching a video to taking action. Here we go. Question number 1. What can you do to improve yourself this week? Number 2, where do you need to be more patient? And number 3, how can you better align your beliefs with your actions? And if you made it this far in the video, I want to celebrate you. Give me a hashtag believe down in the comments as well.
I actually wanted to ask you, you mentioned Mahatma Gandhi ji a lot, usually in your speeches. So I was just wondering, how exactly do you implement his principles and his values in your day-to-day life, and how do you expect the people in US to implement those values?
Well,
Thank you.
it's a terrific question. Let me say, first of all, that he, like Dr. King, like Abraham Lincoln, are people who I'm constantly reading and studying, and I find myself falling woefully short of their example all the time. So, you know, I'm often frustrated by how far I fall short of their example. But I do think that at my best, what I'm trying to do is to apply principles that fundamentally come down to something shared in all the world's religions, which is to see yourself in other people, to understand the inherent worth and dignity of every individual, regardless of station, regardless of rank, regardless of wealth, and to absolutely value and cherish and respect that individual. And then hopefully try to take that principle of treating others as you would want to be treated, and find ways where that can apply itself in communities, and in cities, and in states, and ultimately in a country and in the world.
If you want 10 more rules for success from Warren Buffett, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.